What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you're not sure what's going on, we're actually doing a rebuild on an FZ6R, and we are doing an R6 fork conversion, as you could see from my previous video, the R6 front end conversion teaser trailer. Now anyways, guys, before we actually start rebuilding this bike and putting the R6 parts on it, I do want to talk a little bit about technical specs, technical measurements on the R6 versus the FZ6R, etc. You might be like, well, who cares, right? There is a reason for it, and trust me, like, I'm going to try to take you to the whiteboard here in a minute, and I'm going to try to draw it out. I'm going to try to explain it as best I can. So this is the R6 top triple tree, and there are some important things you need to know when you're playing around with forks and suspension on bikes. Obviously, the first one being the diameter of your forks. Obviously, the diameter of your steering stem is probably going to change as well, as it does with this build. Now, the other thing that a lot of people don't think about is the offset. Now, the offset is considered to be from the center of your steering stem hole to the center of your fork clamp hole. So there you go. Hopefully you can see that. So I've done a little tracing on the R6 top tree. Now we already know the diameter of the forks is 51 millimeters. That's very easy to measure if you have a caliper. Same thing here for the diameters here, but it doesn't matter. We know the R6 stem is going in there. But the important thing is the offset. So from the center of these holes to the center of this hole on the R6 has a 35 millimeter offset. And the center of these two holes, your fork tubes, the center of those two holes is 210 millimeters. So now if I take that same design, the same cutout that I traced from the R6 triple tree, and we essentially lay it over on the bottom of the FZ6R triple tree, this is going to give us a good indication if the measurements are the same or if they're different. Different years of R6s do have different measurements, and guys, that's the main reason behind this. This is why this measurement is important. The 2005 R6 that I have has a different measurement than the 2006 R6, and then probably the next build of the R6, which is 17, 18, I don't even know. So let's lay our template. We're going to lay it on the back of the FZ6R tree. Again, it's a little tricky because it's kind of flimsy. But, so I'm going to try to hold it in place. But basically what I'm trying to show you is the center to center of the fork tubes is exactly the same measurement as the 2005 R6. It's 210 millimeters. And the measurement from the center of your fork tubes to the center of your steering stem is 35 millimeters. So the measurement itself of the top triple tree, like the center, the offset, all that stuff, it is exactly the same. And this is important, guys, because technically if you drop the R6 forks in this FZ6R, technically the dimensions of the suspension do not change. I'm talking about like your rake angle and your trail. Like, a lot of that stuff is not going to change. The only variable in this equation now is the actual length of the fork. I am expecting the R6 fork to be a little shorter, which means essentially the bike is going to be lower in the front. But guys are already doing this on the FZ6R. I've already taken my parts bike, I've lowered it half an inch. It was lowered an inch when I got it. So I know lowering the bike an inch isn't a big necessary concern. Like, it was probably going to happen anyways. So let me take it to the whiteboard, guys. Let me try to draw it in a diagram so it kind of makes sense and it's a little bit easier to explain things visually. So let's go to the whiteboard and I'll try my best to explain it. Alright, so here's our whiteboard, guys. So obviously this is your wheel down here. This center point is your axle of your wheel. All these measurements, rake and trail and all this stuff, is based on basically based around the center of your axle of your front wheel. On an FZ6R, the rake angle is 26 degrees. So this angle is 26 degrees. On an R6, that same rake angle is 24 degrees. So you can see that these lines are going to change. As you decrease your rake angle, this is your trail. So the trail is from basically the center line of your axle vertical to down through the steering stem and continue down to the ground. So this little space here is the trail of the bike. So as you decrease rake angle, you also decrease trail, and vice versa. If you increase your rake angle, you increase your trail. This is why sport bikes have a very, very shitty turning radius. It's because the angle, it's pretty aggressive. 24 degrees is pretty aggressive. Now that we've talked a little bit about the rake and the trail of the bike, I'm going to show you a diagram here I found on Google. Essentially, it's going to explain a little bit how the offset that we talked about earlier changes the symmetry of the forks and essentially the dynamics of the motorcycle. So this diagram is a diagram. It shows a 24 millimeter offset and a 28 millimeter offset. And immediately from the diagram, you can see how it has the effect down here where the two lines meet, of essentially affecting your trail measurement of the motorcycle. So this does affect handling, this does affect turning radius, and that's why this offset is so important. The fact that we're going from an FZ6R to an R6 setup, and the offset is the same. The offset is 35 millimeters. So technically we are not really going to be changing the trail down here by the rake angle, the offset. The only thing that will change in this equation, as mentioned before, is simply the fork length measurement. I hope I explained all that stuff properly, guys. If I didn't, or if I made a mistake, I do apologize, but this is the best way that I know how to describe it. But anyways, sorry to bore you with technical details and things, but sometimes these things are important, because if you change the offset of your triple trees, it's definitely going to change the bike and affect the handling of the bike. And I've seen there's been questions asked about that before with the previous person that tried to document this. But anyways, guys, because the offset's the same, the rake is essentially the same, the only thing is changing the length of the fork of this bike. I'm not expecting a lot of adverse effects on the handling of the motorcycle. Because I will be dropping the front end a little bit, though, there probably will be a couple performance improvements there. Not to mention this, the adjustability of the front end with the R6 components. Anyways, guys, it's a short video. I know you're hoping to get the R6 parts. I know you want to see it. Trust me, I want to get it done too. But I'm trying to document this thing in a proper timeline, in a proper sequence, so that you guys don't have so many questions further down the road. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned to the next video. We will be throwing R6 parts on the next video. I 100% absolutely promise you that. And if you haven't, guys, like, subscribe, and ride safe, and we'll see you on the next video.